Hey, this week on the 167, we're talking about getting back to better. Not normal, not what we used to do, but getting back to being better than we were. Welcome to the 167. Hey, welcome back to the 167. I am here with Mr. Pumpkin Spice Latte, Pastor Rick George.
That is not accurate. I do not like pumpkin spice lattes.
And Mr. Caramel Skinny No Whip Frap,
Ooh,
Pastor Jake Reeves.
Yeah.
Give me some black coffee.
it's fine.
Maybe a
That doesn't exist
caramelicious.
anymore.
That is actually very wrong because yesterday I sent my this is bad. I sent my intern. Well, I sent her to go get coffee for the team, and she was supposed to get a coffee for me with whipped cream on it. And that was sadly the only thing I was really looking forward to because otherwise I'll just drink the coffee we have here at the church.
Yeah.
And they did not put my whipped cream on it.
I can
so
just get you some Ready Whip to
man.
keep in the fridge. You can
it's
start-
not the same. I mean, yeah,
as long as I don't come in and catch
works
you
in a
doing
pinch.
whippets.
Boom.
But
All right.
So there you go. Deep
And
things.
with you, as always, is actually hot apple cider, Lucas Motley.
Wow.
I don't like coffee.
Hot water in a cup with lemon in it. Lucas
No, it's-
Motley.
I mean, that's the thing that I love. Like when Starbucks starts doing, Starbucks or Groundhouse or whatever, start doing like the hot apple cider with like whipped cream and all
Oh,
kinds
yeah.
of caramel. I love me some hot apple cider.
That's great.
It tastes like fall in the cup.
You do you.
This
All
is
right.
fall, so
All right, here
So
we go.
we started this week in our series Back to Better, right?
Yes, we did.
And so my first question for you, just to break the ice, if you will, is what was the thing during the pandemic that you guys said? Because you asked this question in your message. What was the thing that you were like, oh my gosh, I cannot wait to do, like, I want this to be normal again?
Yeah. So for me, and actually for Trudy and I, we enjoy entertaining, having people over. Like, I don't know if you knew this. I'm a relational person. Like, I
what?
just, like, I like.
Newsflash.
I know. It's,
Yeah.
so I enjoy people, and just during that, 6 or 8 months when it was like, man, we'd love to have somebody. We don't know if they're going to say no, and we want to plan something. Even coming out of, that time of saying we should invite some people over, and then it was like, well, I don't know if they're going to feel comfortable, and it's just to be able to invite people over or go to eat or hang out with people without the fear of what other people are going to think or will they want to come and that kind of
All that
thing.
relational baggage.
Oh yeah. So we I just want to go back to where we can have somebody over for dinner and not have to worry about what everybody else is.
What the CDC has to say about it.
Yeah, and let's check the CDC and see if it's okay to have dinner tonight with somebody.
Everyone can have dinner except for Pastor Rick.
Meanwhile, all the introverts were like, man, this is a great excuse, Like, typically I have to make something up. And
We
now
would
it's
love
like,
to come, but just checked with the CDC. It's not allowed.
I've got their Twitter on the front page, so that way.
I got a little tickle in the back of my throat. I don't want to hurt you.
Yeah, I'd love to.
What about you, Pastor Jake?
So Sarah and I, I guess we aren't frequent daters, but when we date hard. No, meaning we go
Each other, right?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
yeah. I just want to clear
Thank
that.
you. That's wonderful clarity.
Clear for that up for the listeners.
So, but we love going to really nice restaurants, unique eating experiences. And so it was, I want to say we just were able to go back out to a place that we'd been kind of eyeing. It was maybe 6 months ago now or something, just while downtown KC was getting opened back up and everything. So we really missed that opportunity to kind of go out, do the arts and stuff. Because I know I'm forgetting names, Kaufman and everything, not Stadium.
The
Center.
Performing Arts
Performing
Center.
Arts Center. We're pretty strict on everything.
Yep.
So, yes.
It's so shocking that the introvert is like, I missed being out in public.
It's true. I do. I just, low-key did appreciate the fact that there was a constant excuse for me not to have to go to people, but I want on my own terms to be able to go out in public, and I want to be where the people are.
Yeah.
I want
I want to be where the people are. For me, you guys had really great answers. Mine was Chili's. We won't go back to Chili's. Like our Chili's is just
Oh, it disintegrated.
Yeah.
And like we literally went there, and this was like it wasn't even at the beginning of the pandemic. I mean, this was like earlier this year or something. We went, and it was my family, which is 6 people, and then my parents, which are 2. And we walked in, and they said we can't sit parties
Right. Oh,
of over 6 people. And I was like, well, we don't mind sitting at separate tables. Like we'll put 4 of us here and 4 of us there. And they're like, no, we can't sit a party of over 6. And I'm like, so like you're just refusing a service? And they were like, yes. And I was like, what if we go outside and 4 of us come in and ask for a table and 4 more of us come in and ask for another table? Like, I already know that you're over party 6. We can't seat you. And I'm like, so you're just flat. Like it was crazy. And that was like the 3rd place that we'd gone that day. And so I was just like, Chili's is dead to me, but I miss the Southwestern egg rolls.
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. So
So we talked this week. We were in, of course, Romans.
Romans 12.
We started off in Romans 12.
Yeah. So we went there because of normal, right? And the definition of normal is conforming to a type, standard, or regular pattern. Which then, when I just read that definition, my mind immediately went to when I saw the word regular pattern. I was like, wait, Romans 12 says, do not conform to the regular pattern of the world, which is what everybody, me including, was saying, that's what we want to get back to. We want to get back to the regular pattern of the world. Mm-hmm. And then right there in my favorite chapter, plain as day, it says, no, don't do that.
I just picture you every time somebody's like, yeah, conform, like you just pop out of nowhere. Conform. Did you say conform? Do not conform. I don't know.
Yeah, so it just started that thought process in my mind and kind of going down that trail of, well, if we're not supposed to conform to the regular pattern, then what should we be striving for? And so that's kind of the genesis of the series and the message of, well, if we're not supposed to go back to this regular pattern, then what's the alternative? Well, we want something better. So that's kind of where we launched from.
Well, and something that jumped out at me, you kind of stressed it a little bit in your message, was that the author of Romans, so, everybody kind of leans towards Paul, but the author, he says, it doesn't say offer your mind or your soul. He says offer your bodies as a living sacrifice. What do you think is the importance of that? Like, why not offer your spirit or offer your soul? Like, why is he going, I need you to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God?
I think just opinion at this point, but when you offer your body, it is everything pertaining to you. It is all in. It's not selective. So offering your body, well, everything else kind of comes with it. So it's a total buy-in, not just a selective here and there. And again, maybe a little deeper or a separate train of thought would be that we're supposed to be Christ-like, and Christ offered his body as a sacrifice, which was a total sacrifice. So they're related, but one is kind of leaning more in towards, following the example of Christ, and the other is just a more practical, hey, if you get my body, you get the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, and there seems to be a correlation. What do you guys think that correlation is between that renewing of your mind or your soul and how it translates into your physical body?
I feel like the body's kind of the last to catch up, where it's like when we're
my flesh is kind of dragging.
Yeah, when we're made new in the when we're made new in the spirit, like boom, that's there, it's happening, and then the mind and the emotions are being transformed when we allow that, and then that begins to impact. Oh, sorry, I'm really far off the mic. I was leaning way forward, and then that begins to impact behavior and like how you're actually acting with your body and
so that whole idea of the mind is willing, but your flesh is weak. So it's pretty common that people want to do something, like in your mind, you're like, man, this is great. I'm going to, and you have this idea of what life is going to be until you realize what you have to do to make that become a reality. And you're like, no. I like the idea. I don't like the process or the discipline required to make that happen. So to simply stay within the mind is very limiting. But it begins with the mind. Your body will follow what your mind has already made up. So your flesh isn't going to go just do something without first your mind having processed through and saying, all right, body, go, do it.
Well, what I think is really interesting about our culture right now too is I feel like it used to be that there was 3 steps in that process, like you just described. It was, I set my mind to something. So if I want to get more healthy or fit, I have to think. This is people will talk about the power of positivity. We talk about transforming your mind. It's I'm going to be this person, right? And then it's and then I translate that and I go, therefore, I'm going to force my body to do this until my body essentially, like you said, catches up.
Yeah.
And I think what's interesting about our culture now is it's the thought is enough. If it's whether you want to talk about identifying some way or just going, mental health or anything else where it's just I think about what's happened with Sports Illustrated where they're going, well, if you're bigger, if you have more weight on you, well, that's beautiful anyway. And it's going, well, we went from hey, listen, I want to get healthy and I'm unhealthy. I'm obese. And I want to be healthy. So therefore I'm going to do that process. I'm going to say, I'm going to think healthier and then I'm going to be healthier in my body. But instead now we're skipping that step and just going, I am, I declare myself to be healthier. It's the Michael Scott
bankruptcy.
Walking out and declaring bankruptcy. And we just declare ourselves to be a way, even though that doesn't translate to our body.
Yeah. So it is a process, right? And that's why he says to be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So transformation is this journey, this process, and the process begins with I have to think different. If I want to be different, I have to think different.
Well, and you're even talking about being better, which I actually wrote down that question, which was, do you think this is a message that our culture can receive right now? Because in our culture, I feel right now, better is judgy. If I'm...
Yeah, I saw that question when you said, is better considered judgy? And I was like, that's a new concept to me. I have no, I haven't heard that. Again, I'm not deep into everything in culture, obviously, but I'd never contemplated the idea that, hey, well, I want to get better, so that's a judgy kind of thing. But
I can understand it a little bit from where if you, in the cultural flow of things, are saying well, the way I'm living is a better way, then immediately people are like, you're not allowed to say that it's a better way. You're not allowed to say because you don't work in an office and you live in a van and post on Instagram that's a better way. You can champion your lifestyle. Yeah,
live your truth.
Yeah, the live your truth stuff. And so I don't know that there's maybe a hard knee-jerk reaction, but there is that sort of I don't know. Yeah, people are maybe cultures.
Yeah, I don't. I always go back so I just went back to this idea that I had when I see people at Chinese restaurants.
Buffets or order?
Either one. When they're trying to use chopsticks.
Oh, yeah.
It's use a fork. It's better. It is better. And I see them fumble. How do you do? I'm trying. It's we've evolved. Use a fork and a spoon.
I can't grab my dumplings or anything else with a fork. That's gonna poke into it. If I use a chopstick, I can grab it delicately.
But this literally played out. Recently, we had gone to dinner with the family in church, and they took us out to dinner, and we ate sushi. And so I picked up the chopsticks and just started using them. And I've used them for a while, but thanks to TikTok and Instagram Reels, I know a better way to use them. I saw somebody explain it to me.
A different way to use, not a better way. But it's a different.
That's true. That's true.
But literally,
a different way.
The sushi comes, I pick it up, I start dipping it, and I start eating it. And the guy across me just looks at me and goes, you think you're better than me? and I'm like, no. And I'm like, he's like, well, I can't use chopsticks like that. I'm like, well, here. And I tried to show him how, and he's like, I can't do it that way. And I'm just like, but it's.
Did you ghost him and like go behind him and try to help him?
I did. Unchained Melody.
Started playing.
But I mean, like literally, there's that. I almost hear that Tony Soprano or like Joe Pesci kind of. Well, you think you're better than me?
Yeah.
Like
100%.
And like sometimes where you say like, hey, you need to have a better faith. They're like, what's wrong with my faith? Like, or people that are like people that want to better themselves. I think want to better themselves.
Yeah.
But if you come along somebody that doesn't want that, it's really hard to say.
There's a defensiveness.
Yeah, there's a defensiveness of I don't want to be better.
And for me, like when I, again, stepping out of whatever those cultural biases and what the word better might mean, it was that whole beginning was about really my place in life, and I don't want to be normal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like for me, I don't want to stay where I am. I want to get better.
Yeah.
Like, so it never crossed my mind that I was somehow conveying that I am better than you. Like it was, I just want better.
Right.
And so anyway, it's an interesting.
Which I think the overarching thing of like, I want better is still widely accepted, but I think people are weird about what actually is better.
It depends on what you want them to be better at. Like everybody would be like, of course I want to be better. What about this area of your life? No, I'm fine.
Yeah.
But so the story that we were talking about is when the Israelites are leaving Egypt, of course. And it's like, and they get to the wilderness and they say, I want to go back to Egypt because we, sure we were slaves, but at least we had pots of meat. And I'm like, dude, what is the power of meat? But, so I wrote down too, for people who aren't familiar with exactly how they got in that predicament, you had the story of Joseph. He comes down, he becomes number 2 for Pharaoh, and then his family moves down, and his family, the 12 sons of Jacob, become this huge nation, and they have sheep, and they live kind of on the outskirts in Goshen, and there's a point, like you said, where the Pharaoh dies, and the Egyptians go, there's a lot of these Israelites. If they wanted to, they could conquer us. So instead, let's oppress them. And I wrote down this question. I said, why do you think that the Israelites didn't just leave, quote unquote, normal at the beginning of their oppression? For us in modern day, it's like, okay, I live in a neighborhood. The neighborhood starts to get bad. My neighbors start to hate me. Oops, all of a sudden I'm a slave. It's starting to get bad. Why didn't you just move? Like, what is it about, society and normality that just draws us in and we refuse to leave?
Yeah, we establish patterns of life. We establish norms, and we just settle into those things. And I'm not saying that every norm of life is wrong, but sometimes we just get in some pretty destructive norms and patterns. It happens in marriage where like Trudy and I talk all the time about like, generally it's her, like she'll say, I think we've gotten into some pretty bad patterns of communicating, or, it's like something has gone wrong, but you get there because the pattern you just continue on with it. But going a little deeper with that, which we don't have a lot of time, but so the norm worked for the moment. Maybe it brought a little stability, but then you start replicating that pattern, and then something gets a little off, and just a little bit off in a pattern. As you continue in that pattern, the delta, or that thing that's a little different, then multiplies every time that you reproduce that pattern. So eventually you get to this place where we're nowhere close to where we were, and we didn't even realize it. Like we were just following the pattern, but the pattern was off just a little bit. And so for the Israelites, I think they were just like, this is life, this is good, we're getting taken care of, we're comfortable in this environment. They might have even thought, God brought us here, God has provided for us. And then something changed, and they didn't even consider that this was a bad thing, we should bail. It was like, it's just normal.
So the Egyptians come through and they're like, hey, we're just going to take all your spears and swords. And they're like, well, we're shepherds. What do we don't,
Yeah,
these
you're
are our
totally
friends,
fine.
and we're totally fine. It's like, hey, we would love for you to come and build these pyramids. Well, pyramids are great.
Yeah.
Just,
There's probably multiple layers to that, but ultimately it's none of us, I shouldn't say none, most people do not like to just be ripped away from their comfort zone. It takes a little time to get your head wrapped around, I need to make this change, and here's what it means, and here's what we need to do. It's just a lot of work. It's effort. It's just easier to stay.
yeah, it's almost that even the passiveness is what kind of, like you said, if you're in a pattern, it's like our healthy pattern of communication is we sit down every night and we tell each other about our day. And to break that, you don't even have to do something else. You just lack doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
What do you guys think is, because in that analogy while we're talking about the Israelites, is they finally had to break free of Egypt. And even though they physically left Egypt, they still in their minds wanted that. They wanted what do you think keeps people connected to their brokenness? Or like when you're saying like, I don't want to go back to normal, because that was what we're talking about, is that we went through this, collective trauma or whatever it is. And we're going, well, now I want to go back to normal. And you made that point of, you're trying to go back to what you were complaining about before.
yeah.
So
So you go back to 2019 and like people were saying, I hate where I am. Like, I don't like this. I want to be different. I want something new. And then 2020 hits.
It's gonna be my year.
Yeah, and everybody's
Oh my
going
gosh.
into January with 2020 is the year of freedom. It's the year of victory. And then oh boy, and so suddenly everybody wants to go back to that place that they were just a year ago. We're praying I can get out of that thing. Well, now we're wanting to go back. Why? Because it seems better than what I'm currently in. And so even though that was bad, it seems better than where I am. And so that, I gave the analogy of the good old days, right? When people say, oh, if we just went back to the good old days. It's like, really, what were the good old days like, really? When we romanticize or we over-exaggerate what used to be, right? And we live in the glory of something that really wasn't even real. Like it's what we've imagined it once was, but it wasn't all that great.
I see that now with culture where it's like somebody posted a picture on Instagram that it was side by side. It's like you grew up in the 80s and it's a modern kid's bedroom that has like neon lights in it and all this like retro 80s vibe. And it's like, no, I grew up in the 80s. And the next picture is like those like really rough couches that were like, and it was just like wood panel walls and it looked really dumpy. And it's like, that's the 80s I grew up in.
Don't trust Stranger Things.
Yeah. And it's like the same thing with like the 90s culture now where it's like, people are like, we're dressing like the 90s. I'm like, no, you're dressing like a caricature of the 90s.
Yeah.
Like you are dressed as the nostalgia part of the 90s.
I had a lot of people be like, man, if we just go back to the music of the 90s. And I'm just like, meh. I mean,
the quality of the recordings were not as good.
Like,
it's just like,
yeah, a lot of it was really rough. Like, yeah, everything's viewed through this rose-colored glasses thing.
Yeah. So again, and this is true. So I use the analogy of people who stay in abusive relationships. Well, oftentimes people that are in abusive relationships get out temporarily.
and then they're lonely.
Then they go back. And it's like, well, why did you go back? Well, it's because, and there's some reason that makes sense to them that, well, that person wasn't as bad as this person or what I'm experiencing. So I'm willing to go back and suffer this instead of pushing through to achieve this. But it's just, it's that mind that we have to be renewed in our mind. We have to think different and believe different so we can leave what Egypt represents.
Right.
So we can go through this middle space, through the journey to get to this place that God had promised us.
And you mentioned that in your sermon, and we kind of want to close on this issue, but because I thought it was so important that you said that in that middle space, if we could change our mindset to view the wilderness in that middle space as on our way to our destination, on our way to the promised land, and something that we're going through to get to the promised land versus its own, end all be all struggle, that we would have a better mindset. How do you think that could actually change our congregation or our city if people viewed what the temporary pain that they were going through as the wilderness that they were going to the promise?
Yeah. So again, when you look at that whole journey, it was, you're not in captivity, but you're not in the promised land, but there's some things to do along the way to get you to the promised land. And so for us as a church or individually to think, okay, I've been set free, I've been redeemed, I am free, and I get to go on this journey with Christ. Right? So it's me and Jesus, or us collectively. We're on this journey, allowing him to provide for us, to instruct us, to guide us along the way, and just be obedient. Just do what he says to do on this journey so we can get to ultimately to the promised land, or to the prize of eternity with him. That place in the middle is a place of blessing. It was a place of provision for them. God was like, their shoes didn't wear out, right? I mean, God was like, oh, you want something else to eat?
Here's some quail.
Yeah, here's like,
so much quail, you'll be sick of it.
It's like, you want, so he was providing for them. It just wasn't what they wanted. So we wanted out of here. Okay, well, I'll get you out of there. Just walk with me. Well, now I don't want to walk with you. I want to do my own thing. And it's how we are. And it partly, I think, ties into what the Apostle Paul says about being content. It's like, be content with walking with God. Don't have such high expectations of what God is supposed to do for me today to make my life perfect. It's like, what do I need to do with him to accomplish the plan so that I can get to where he wants me to be?
Right. Well, and that's the struggle I see with discipleship, and I'd be curious where you guys see the struggle as well. But with discipleship, somebody that comes in, they have an experience with Christ. Maybe they find freedom. Maybe they get to know God, and they say, man, I just, I have an addiction. I have this. And we go, hey, you need to get out of that. And they go, that's great. We pray for them, and they go, man, and they get some relief. They get that instant relief.
Yeah.
And they go, cool. But they still have all the same friends. They still hang out in all the, it's like you have to alter your entire, it's that physical, they've changed their mind, and God's changed their spirit, he gave you a new spirit. But it's like, well, now you're going back into all the same spaces and experiencing all the same temptation. And they go, well, this is just a wilderness and I'm not really free. I'm like, no, you're not in slavery anymore. Yeah. You are in this wilderness that you have to get through to get to the other side of, maybe you don't have those cravings anymore because you've trained your body or you've trained this. But
yeah. So I know we're out of time and we're going to wrap up, but let me just say real quick when you brought that up. So what all of us have experienced and seen in people's lives. So they get delivered, right? I was broken. I was lost. I was in an abusive situation, an addictive situation, whatever it is. I've been freed from that, and I'm born again. And we've seen hundreds of people, literally probably way more than hundreds and hundreds of people whose lives have just been transformed, and they just can't get enough of Jesus, can't get enough of church, can't get enough of fellowship. Like, they're here for 2 services, like I came for first service, I stayed for worship and second service. I'm back, for life group, and I'm going to this ministry. It's just, man, it changed my life, and I'm so, and you talk to them, and they're like, man, this is amazing. 2 years later, it's like, yeah, we're going to the lake this weekend, and we're doing that. We're kind of struggling. Why?
Right.
Why?
And it wasn't an immediate thing ever.
No, it just you just kind of drifted, and it's like, I'm not in captivity. Like, I was on this journey, but immediately we started to think, well, that's too much, and then we're not experiencing what we once experienced.
Yeah.
Right. And it wasn't because God abandoned us. It was because slowly our minds began to shift into something else, and we had other desires on this journey, right? And then it got caught, and we're like, in some ways it was a lot easier just be back where I was.
Well, it's what you said about like what you did with Trudy. It's not even that you did something different. It's the lack of intentionality.
Yeah. So
Well, we're going to keep talking about this. We hope that you guys join us for the next couple weeks for Back to Better. We'll see you guys next time here on the 167. If you enjoyed this episode of the 167, make sure you like, subscribe, follow, get notified, leave a 5-star rating and a positive review. Tell all your friends to listen as well. Make sure you go over to newlifegardener.com and check out all that we have to offer as a church, and check out our messages online as well. Thanks for listening.